Welcome to the Fix Your BS podcast, where we dive deep into the belief systems that shape our lives and hold us back from achieving our dreams. I'm your host, Dr. Greg Pursley, also known as Dr. G. And in each episode, we explore powerful conversations with successful individuals across business, money, relationships, health, and personal growth. So join us as we unpack their journeys, challenge their limiting beliefs, and discover practical insights to help you build your dream life on your terms. It's time to fix your BS and unlock your full potential. Today, we have an amazing guest. We've got a guy that has done some amazing things in multiple different industries. His name's Joe Blackburn, and I'm going to talk a little bit today. He's the owner and founder of the Lion Mastermind and also Sales Assassins. So we like talking about money. We like talking about masterminds, the importance of those things, but also how important is sales? I mean, we're going to talk a lot about that. So Joe, thanks for being here, man.
Hey, man, it's awesome to be here. Good to see you, Dr. G.
Nice to see you too. So in introducing ourselves to each other here, we were talking a little bit before. We have some mutual connections. I want to start out with network. You have a mastermind. A lot of people know what that is. It was made famous by the book Think and Grow Rich, which I've read multiple times. But the mastermind is so important. But I want to talk about networking. Tell me, number one, a little bit about where you came from.
Sure.
And the success you've had and the importance of networking to achieve that success.
Well, I spent, most of my adult life in financial services, and networking was a key to that. And we'd always say networking is one letter away from not working. So there is a way to strategically network so that A, you're giving back, and B, you're achieving your business goals.
I've never heard it put that way. And I'm going to write that down because I love that. Networking is one letter away from not working. I love that.
That's true. I've met a lot of professional not workers. They go to everything, attend every event, and they never do any business, or even worse, they get ostracized out of the network they're trying to get into because they're so salesy, they're so direct, and their motive is only to get business. And, I teach this in Assassins and in our inner circle. Your motive when you're going to network is the most important thing, and it should be to give back. You should start with go to something you'd go to if you never got $1, because you'll get sniffed out in a heartbeat if you're there for anything else. And it allows you to, you talk about, relationships and life and money. What I teach is a lifestyle. So networking is a huge part of it. And most of it centers around what you're giving, not what you're getting. And law of reciprocity always kicks in. So if you're a giver and you can give time or money and or both, you will, get back. But I've seen a lot of people, run themselves out of really good groups just because they were there for one reason. And, all of us are pretty, no matter what anyone says, we can smell in a heartbeat what you're there for. So that was something I learned that one pretty early, actually.
Did you learn that from experience on your own end? Because I've actually been on both ends of that.
Yes.
I used to go to some networking events and okay, good. Yeah. So tell me about your experience. Cause I know I've experienced it on the front end where I went into an event and I was too aggressive. I didn't take the time and energy to actually build relationships. I was just trying to get. And there's definitely obviously a difference in outcome, but there's also a difference in energy during that time as well. So tell me a little bit about that and your experience.
When I first started out really in business, I worked for a company where I went door to door, and we learned how to sell things. So the sales process and the mindset was closing, selling something, getting that result. And it was a numbers game. So early in my career, and I was real young, I'd go to a chamber or Rotary or, something in the community, and I'd want to make a sale. And I had some people give me some feedback pretty early that, calm down a little bit. And I realized the way to do it is to first go there and give. So, in the beginning, especially in the sales cycle, a lot of people, they can't write a big check. They're not the platinum sponsor of these events, but there's always a committee. There's always an initiative. There's always something going on where those organizations need help. And I found it more rewarding financially to go and do that first. And I didn't love all that. However, I did enjoy being a part of something that, made a difference in other people's lives. And I just over the years realized that just getting in there and getting to know everyone first and then deciding where you can plug in is better than just going in there and seeing who you can make a sale with. And again, I learned that one early the hard way. I mean, I think in my first year in business, my breakfasts and after hours, was half of my week's eating. So, you go to chamber before hours and chamber after hours, you could get 3-4 meals out of that. And that,
Yeah,
that
absolutely.
was something that it wasn't, as you go up in affluence, meaning the people that you serve, they get that stuff pretty quick. So that was kind of an eye opener, and more than anything, and we teach this especially in assassins because that's where a lot of our people are. If you're going to do a charity, if you're going to do an association, if you're going to be part of a club or something, pick one that you are passionate about, because then your motives starts there, and as a byproduct, you will do some business with people that have a common interest.
And I think that's a pretty common mistake, especially if you listen to some people in the sales world. They're like, you need to go out and you need to attack and you need to be hungry and you need to go make sales. And what they're missing on that is that relationship side. A friend of mine wrote a book called The Relationship Bank Account, and it just talks about depositing into that bank account before you ask for anything. And having that giving mindset, you give so you can receive, but you're not doing it so you can receive. You're actually doing it with the intention of, I'm going to build this relationship and help this person out. And guess what they're going to want to do? They're going to want to have that law of reciprocity, and they're going to reciprocate that role.
Yeah.
To people that are younger, I've been in this game a while, the game of business and building these relationships for about 20 years. And for the first probably decade, I did it wrong. I didn't realize playing the long game, how that mindset was so important. What's the difference between, in your perspective, the long game versus the short game and those relationship building type of actions?
Well, in the short game, and there's I don't always fault the younger people in sales because they've got to hit some numbers. So you have to take that into account. But if you really only get one chance with most people, I mean, that's, so if you're playing the long game, and if you think about it this way, a lot of the people we work with, whether it's luxury jewelry or investments or real estate or whatever it is, the experience of being with you or working with you is what the person on the other side is actually buying into, versus a consumption of a thing where that is a different skill set, and it's a different, I hate to use the word paradigm on our podcast. We got called out for saying paradigm too much, but it's different because that is something that's consumed, and it can be consumed immediately. So if you go into a relationship trying to make a transaction, you're short circuiting everything that could lead to a lifelong client or a lifelong relationship by just trying to make that sale. So I would look at it this way. If you have to hit numbers, you can play the cold, out in the cold universe game. I mean, like I said, I went door to door, farm to farm first. So that was a numbers game, and I had to hit it. When I started getting more into what would be called advisory, it was about getting clients for life. I mean, I wanted, that, and not everybody becomes a client, but they can be an influencer for you. They can be a strategic alliance. I mean, there's so many things you can do for each other, versus when you go to transaction, you're divorcing yourself economically from the outcome in that instance. You're trying to hit a number and then hit the next number. And, it's one of those things, especially today where trust is at an all-time low. If you become transactional, it's like the good Lord said, you live by the sword, you die by the sword. So
That's
pick
right.
the sword correct. I'd rather have a bunch of people that, I've got a lifelong relationship with, that we care about each other.
And it goes back to your reputation, man. Like you go into an event, and I'm there to be intentional and meet people that would benefit me, that I could also benefit. But it's not jumping into the, hey, let me make this sale. It's like, well,
Right.
who are you? Do you align with what I align with? And can I benefit you in some way by what my product or service is?
Right.
And I think that's lost in today with the amount of people that are out there, which I would consider spewing lies online, trying to be coaches or transformational coaches or business coaches. And that's just become such a buzzword. 30 years ago, there were no coaches unless you were playing a sport.
Right.
Now there's coaches for everything.
And I'm one of them. How weird. But
Well, and here's what's funny is I am too. I'm a coach and consultant in the business world, but and also the personal world. But I only coach and consult on things that I've done and experienced and
correct.
accomplished. I don't tell somebody if I'm going to tell somebody, hey, I'm going to help you build a $10 million business that I've never actually built. I'm not going to do that. I can
Right.
get you to about 7 million, and then after that, I'm gonna have to refer you because after that, I don't understand. I've never been there. But that's the difference, and that's what I would tell everybody: is if you're going to go to a coach and consultant, make sure you ask, what they've actually accomplished first
Sure.
before you jump into their Kool-Aid or drink their Kool-Aid.
Well, I always say I don't talk about things I haven't done. It just that way I don't have to defend myself and I don't have to feel like, I don't know, they call it imposter or whatever. But if, we were doing in our mastermind, we did a thing on stress relief because everybody's getting stressed out. Well, I didn't talk about meditating because I don't meditate. So I could tell everyone all day long, here's how you meditate. Well, I've never done it, nor do I intend on doing it. I know that is probably better from a marketing standpoint. And that's, when you talk about business right now, I mean, it is so easy for someone to jump online and say whatever they want. And who you're seeing make a lot of money are marketers.
Yeah.
They're not practitioners.
People that can tell a story and connect with people emotionally,
Yeah.
which is kind of what you were talking about earlier.
Right. And I mean, that's a skill all in itself. However, if you're obsessed with client results, that's a different ballgame. And in my business, if people don't get results, they don't pay, and we don't have a business. So we're like, results is what we're after. And that's what we measure. And some of them are metric based, but some of them are intangible. Our mastermind, people have been in it for several years now. And I would argue that it's about what it feels like to be a part of something like that, as much as it is on the hygiene of, I get the business results. Because that's, especially if you're employing a professional, that's expected. Like, you don't go to a CPA and expect them to mess your taxes up. Like, that's not how that relationship goes. So it's like, I can call that hygiene. That's expected. That's well, I should hope so. And then there's the experience of what it's like to be your client or in a collaboration or whatever it is. And that's where you get longevity and high value. And it's a partnership in almost all regards.
So talk to me about mindset on that, the short term versus long term. How does somebody play the game of, yeah, I might need to hit sales quotas, but I also want to think of the 10, 15, 20-year game, the long game of I want to help people build those relationships at the same time. How does somebody in your mind play those two roles at the same time?
Well, number one, ethically, you have to recommend what you believe is best. So if you start there, and I teach something called pillars, and that's a form of word of mouth marketing. And if you think about it this way, like, you are the product technically in that they are buying into you. So the real sale that is being made is, does this person know, like, and trust me and believe I can help them? All the money in the world will come when you cross that bridge.
Mm-hmm.
But if you jump out of the bushes and try to sell something in the short game, you're technically short circuiting all that know, like, and trust. You're trying to capture an emotion and have them take action. And there's people that make $1 gazillion online teaching that. I mean, I've done all that training where, your closing techniques and all these things. It's almost like trying to leapfrog the important part to get to the end result. And then you're there. And I will tell you, especially in our business, so playing that long short game, if you make the sale, there is 100% buyer's remorse because you took an emotional moment and got someone to a yes. And I know everyone teaches that, but if you do that, you have to understand you are now in a transaction, and now you just have to recreate that again. Versus if I do what's right, I recommend what's right, and I fulfill, that will last for a long time. So over time, I'll make more money, and I'll be more fulfilled in my relationships and my life and all, like I say, pillars of lifestyle. Now it becomes about doing the things I like with the people I like, and we both prosper financially versus I made that sale. So I think what ends up happening is the right people generally get into the consultative game, meaning I'm a consultative sales individual versus those that just want to make quick money. And if quick's 10 years, then do some type of coaching, consulting, advisory relationship. Because in a decade, you can make an enormous amount of money, but you're not going to make it in month one.
Right.
So therein lies the rub. I think it's sometimes what vehicle are you choosing? What car am I in versus, what did I get done today? Now, I say all that. I still believe metrics are important. Numbers are important, but it's more based on your output and the leverage of your output and what you're doing versus making every single sale. And that's a spectrum. I mean, you get what you choose. So if you want to get into the sales game, then go learn how to close, but you have to live with that. And if you want to have lifelong relationships, the long game, then find something where you can continually grow with someone.
Something that lights you up and gets you excited too, that you can consistently do. Like, my favorite thing is helping other people have aha moments, things that I've been through that I'm like, I can actually see the result. You can't see it yet because you haven't gained the understanding yet. And I'm going to help you get there. It's one of my favorite things to do. And they come back and go, you helped me, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, no. All I did was got you to see where you were heading and you made different decisions. So I always give the credit right back to them.
Yeah.
But let's talk about those pillars for a second. It's PILLR is what you're talking about, the pillar
Correct.
system that you have. And tell us how it works and really, how it helps sales professional generate more quality referrals, because referrals come from you did something great for the person. They got the result and they said, I had such a great experience. You should see my guy.
Correct. So pillars by definition is someone that pays me ideally, because I can't be everything to everyone. So they pay me ideally. They'll introduce people if I ask properly. If I ask properly for the introduction, not who do you know or 3 people you know or whatever that work you want to give someone.
Nobody likes that, by the way. Nobody.
No.
Every time I've ever been asked in that way, I immediately feel like this.
Yeah, because you gave me work and I got stuff going on. I don't want to think. So there is a way to properly source and ask for introductions. Then you actually have to like one another. So we like each other because you're going to spend time. I mean, like I said, you're going to spend time with these people and they listen to you. The worst thing you can have is that you took your standards down and took on somebody that's not going to take your advice, because you will be punished for that. I promise. And it's going to be at the worst time. And then the R is unsolicited referrals, because what you said, what I've done such a great job and created such a great experience, they just have created in their mind the person that I can help the most. And when that person presents themselves, they say, you need to go talk to Dr. G, because that takes you all the way across the know, like, and trust bridge to immediate, like, they will know, like, and trust you by default until you prove them wrong. And notice we do not have an A in there. And I learned this going through financial crisis, is there's no assholes involved. if you, again, it's that pressure of taking on that client that is going to be a problem. And those people will show themselves early. I say from experience, just don't, if your radar goes off, this is going to be a problem. This is how this person is. They treat people poorly. They complain. They talk about price. They don't appreciate what they have. It doesn't take a lot for your, system to say this is wrong. Just don't do business with them. Plus that opens up the door to someone that actually likes you and listens to you.
Yeah.
So
that's something that I experienced long ago as well. And it was being able to fire customers or fire in the medical world, because I own some medical clinics, integrated medical clinics, fire patients where you're like, look, we would love to help you, but unfortunately, this is just not going to work. You're not committed to the process like we are. So we're going to refer you out. Or in the customer or, client customer world, it's, look, hey, unfortunately, we're not aligned. It's okay. We'll help you find some place that is in alignment, that you can, work with them the way you want to work with them. Great. I hope you get results. Wish you the best of luck. Right. And that's really what you're talking about is firing them. Now, Tony Robbins talks about that. And he says, if you're going to fire a customer, fire them publicly. Have you ever heard of that?
I'm not, but I'm going to try it now. I like it.
He
Make an
goes, fire
example.
customers publicly so everyone knows that you're holding your customers to the standard that you hold your team. And I love that. But that comes from a sense of being comfortable, security, where you're not trying to do everything for everyone. You know who your customer is, you know what you can do for them, and you're not going to take their bull crap because you are and generally it happens when you're financially you're comfortable, where you're like, you know what, I'm not worried about, well, what if this money doesn't come in. That's the way it kind of happened for me, and I felt the difference. Is that just an experience thing, or can people figure that out before, like from somebody else's experience, just from
Well, I would
guidance?
hope the people that work with us take my word for it, because I went through 01, 02, and 08 and 09, and people who we knew were going to be a problem certainly were.
Yeah.
So when you think it, so I talk about pillars being a lifestyle, it's also a filter, because if they're arguing with you on price or on paying, there's your first red flag. If you don't suspect or get the feeling they would introduce you to someone, you can get a feel for that pretty early. But then it gets down, do you actually like this person? I mean, and do you feel like they like you back? Because again, when you're talking the long game, you're going to spend a lot of
Mm-hmm.
time with them. And then when you make your recommendations, do they want 3? Because if they'll take my third because it's the one they want, it's probably the wrong one. And that's going to come, that will show it. That won't show itself in good time, by the way.
Well,
It's
not only
when,
that, you don't want the referrals of a person that you're not aligned
right,
with. If there's this awkwardness or whatever, this trudging that you have to do, you
right,
don't. They're hanging out with other people like them. You don't want
right.
that
Like
group,
attracts like. Well, you don't want to
right?
deal, you don't want to deal with someone you dread. And I would highly encourage to do it as early as possible. And it just take my word for it. If anyone sees this,
Jeez.
just move on.
Everyone,
We
if
kind of
you're
have a
watching this, just listen to Joe, please.
trust me. I know when someone says trust me, you instantly don't trust them. I'm telling you emphatically, if your gut says this is going to be a problem, you're probably right.
What you're saying is basically there's two ways to learn: from your experiences or from someone else's
Right.
experiences. Please listen to my experience, my wisdom. I'm trying
Right.
to save you pain. You don't
Yes.
have to trust me. You can go through it yourself. Be my guest. It's not fun. It costs time, energy, and money. And I'm sure you don't want to spend those things on
Correct.
something that you could avoid.
It's one of the levers of, there's 7 points of leverage. I don't know them off the top of my head, but I know one of them is learn from other people's mistakes so that you don't have to make them.
Other people's time, other people's money, other
Yeah.
people's information, knowledge. Yeah.
OPP, we call it other people's pillars.
Other people's pillars. That's good. Yeah. I like it. I like it.
Yeah.
Man, you got all sorts of things I'm going to be writing down and using in the future.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. One of the things I really love doing is hearing other people's stories, so I can get the theme or the lesson from their
Mhm.
story, so then I can utilize that and implement it in my own life. Are there any blaring stories or lessons that you learned that you were like, I really wish I had learned this earlier in my career to implement it and change? It could have changed my entire life. I've got one, and I can go first if you're thinking, unless you got one right off the top of your
I
head.
mean, I have a handful. It's a weird thing because I feel like if I didn't go through this, I wouldn't be where I am. It's one of those situations. But if I would have maybe seen the world a little differently and thought differently, I'd be where I want to be faster. So, one of the, and I don't regret it because I have great relationships and great friendships and great experience, and I'm using it now. But I left corporate America in 2019, and I spent all my time, I don't know if you call it climbing the ladder, but going through the ranks, the rite of passage. And I had a great mentor. He's a little older than I was, and just, hard as a coffin nail and hard on me so that when I was in the real world, it wouldn't be so hard. And just that's invaluable in that. It's just that I had to get to a certain point to realize that I don't have to play someone else's, song or I don't have to do this to get where I want to go. And there's this whole world out there that I can go, and you kind of said in the beginning when we were talking, I can go do what I want when I want. And I did that at 42. And, I've got people in our programs or inner circle and that, they're in their late 20s and 30s. And it's like this mindset of I've got to go through these things to get to this. And this is the only way. And it's all, I don't regret it at all. I mean, I just think, maybe what if I would have done that at 32 versus 42? What if I would have went out on my own at 32? That's the only thing that sticks out in my mind. Just that feeling of this is all I can do. And when I left the corporate world, and I've told this story 100 times. So I don't know if anyone even watched me, but if they did, I left it all. I had 5 kids, wife with cancer. I had really achieved what at that time was my dream. I was a director, and it's like, it's all risky. So you might as well just do what you really want to do and what you enjoy. Like you talked about, you got to have passion around it. It's not that I wasn't passionate. It's just I was doing all these things I didn't really want. I mean, I was doing them because I had to do them for that. And it
goes back to your beliefs, though. That's why I wrote the book Fix Your BS, Fix Your Belief Systems, because most people live somebody else's life. They live the idea of what someone else says they should be doing. And when I say should be, it's based on a fear or a lack of money or a lack of security, or some sort of issue that they believe, but it's not really actually real. It's just your belief. And so like, well, I had to go become a doctor because my dad told me to. Like, no, that's not true. I can't go on trips because whatever. And they make some sort of connection. I actually worked with a lady one time who I said, if you could do anything right now, money didn't matter, time didn't matter, what would it be? And she was like, man, I would love to go on a cruise. And I'm like, well, what has kept you from going on one? She's like, well, I can't because I don't have anybody to go with. And I'm like, well, you're shutting off even the possibility of going, like you didn't even look. I'm like, have you asked other people? She's like, well, no, not really. I'm like, well, if you could go on a cruise, where would it be? And she started naming, Cozumel and Belize and Progresso and blah, blah, blah. And anyway, and so we created, just from talking about it, the possibility of it, because before she didn't even have it. She just shut it down. And it really gets me thinking about other people and their lives and where they're at and if they ever sit back and actually think about what they're shutting off in their life and the things that they don't think are a possibility simply because they've never stopped to analyze the possibilities.
And for me personally, it was a certain level of pain that made me start looking. And up until that point, the pain was the rite of passage. And it didn't hurt. It was like, you got to go through this. And then it became, why am I doing this? Why am I stressed out about this bullshit? Like, why this is, and then I would look at how much I was being compensated for the amount of work I was doing. And I'm like, this is nuts. So it kind of, I don't know if it was one epiphany, but there were things that really opened my eyes. And then I looked around, I'm like, I can go do whatever I want. And now, so now I live in the Gulf of Mexico and hang out with the people in the inner circle, and we get great results, and we all love each other. So I think, and
so let's talk about that though, because a lot of people are listening to this that sit in a corporate position. Yeah. And they're afraid of moving on. They might have a wife, they might have kids, they might have a spouse or kids.
Right.
And they're like, well, what happens if, it doesn't work, or what happens? And what I always tell them is like, you'll figure it out. Like you will figure it out, whether you believe you will right now or not. You will always figure it out. If you're listening to a podcast like this, you have that spirit of like, I'm going to figure it out. But you stopped the corporate thing, and then you started a mastermind and started other things. So talk about that transition, unless you have something else to add there.
No, that's fine. I would say it this way. If you have to, you will. It's like Tony Robbins, your musts get done. Your shoulds don't. So put yourself in a position where the must has to get done. So my wife had breast cancer. I had 5 kids. And I went 0 benefits, 0 income, all the stock I had accumulated. I was too young to take it with me. So I put myself in a situation where like, this is either going to work or I'm going back to what I hated. And it worked. And then, I had different iterations. When I first started, I was doing just one-on-one coaching, and I actually loved that, and started to look at different options. I did some other, business ventures along the way, but then I ran into the idea of the mastermind. And you're right, Napoleon Hill and Think and Grow Rich. And that I basically took my one-on-one business down to a small group, and we launched, I think we had a different name. We did. It was called Comanche. Cause I don't know. I liked it.
The Comanche group.
Yeah. But I read this book so if you're sitting in your office and you're wondering what I should do, I read this book, and it was really interesting about, what it takes from a faith standpoint to really start evaluating what you're supposed to be doing. And that's where that's where the Lion's Eye came from. It's a Mark Batterson book. And it had these big yellow eyes. Anyway, and he was watching me all the time, watching me be pissed, watching me travel away from my family, and I had an old Jim Rohn quote pop into my head. I'd probably been listening to or whatever. And he said, it's all risk. It's all risk. You get fired. I mean, you could get fired tomorrow. And I told this story too many times. I mean, I saw some good people get fired, and I saw some people that needed to be fired get fired. So, but it was like, it doesn't matter. I mean, who have you hitched your wagon to in that environment says a lot. So then I started looking at, what do I really want to do? And I've always enjoyed leadership development, coaching, I just like that. My dad was a basketball coach. Then he left that and became a CEO. And I mean, my dad's he's just a great leader. So I'd always been around like that, like where, so I just liked it. And I one day called in and resigned. And then it's like, okay, well, now you got to do something. And that's, what it started as. And now we've been doing the mastermind is Labor Day of 22. So a little over 2 years, had 6 in-persons. The group's changed a little bit, the dynamics. But that doesn't feel like work to me. That's what I love.
Mm-hmm. That's like this, we've done over 100 episodes now of this podcast. And, people ask me sometimes because, some of them get some visibility and whatever. And they're like, why are you doing this? I'm like, because I love meeting new people. I love hearing their stories. I love helping them within my network and connecting them with others, building our group. And whether we get views or visibility or not, it's really great for me to offer and help other people. I love doing it. So this is a language of love. And so like, there's some consultants out there that are like, well, if it's not making money, you shouldn't do it. And I'm like, well, I don't totally agree with that. I think if it lights you up and gets you excited, continue doing it. Like, I love doing this. And there's some of them that have really gone viral and some episodes that are like, didn't do a lot, but I don't really care. I like doing it. So, what is if you had to bridge that gap between like what I must do to provide, but also being lit up and excited, do you have a process that you have your mastermind group go through or something that really allows them to figure out how to build their life? Is there something that you do for that?
Yeah, there is. So we first start out, and like I said, the product is you, but the first thing is your mindset. Like, we go through a process of, it seems trite, but like a 10-year dream. And that's basically step one. What does your life look like 10 years from now? Your health, your family, your wealth, your business, all those different aspects, kind of like your pillars. What does that even look like a decade from now? Because most of us live in the moment. And it's not like I'm special. There are times when, I get the 911 call and, but I like to start there, because where I was 10 years ago, where I am today, and where I'm going to be 10 years from now are going to be so different that the problems of today will be laughable or minuscule compared to where I'm at. So just dream it. Don't plan it. Don't rationalize it. What does that look like? And then we dial that down and, well, okay, if that's where you want to be 10 years from now, let's try to get there faster. Number one. But then what do I got to do this year? Like for that to come true, like what's your health got to look like? What's your, what are you facing in your family? So really getting, finite on what do I got to get done in the next 12 months? What do I got to do in the next 90 days? What do I got to do today? That's where it starts. And, I say this on a lot of the podcasts I'm on, and I was not a believer in these. I thought they were goofy. Affirmations. I am telling you, if you don't do them, the thing that will talk to you is the thing that will talk you out of it. It'll keep you where you are and probably make you smaller. Because by survival, just, human nature, you're not going to want to do some of this stuff. Like the person we were talking about at the beginning of this, that dude he is a stone cold killer and he has fear, but he acts in spite of it. And it's very little, but it didn't start that way because he could see something much bigger. So it's all here first. And especially in like if you're in consulting or coaching or whatever, people don't want to do the mindset stuff. It's not like I say it once and it works. You've got to do it. You've got to write your goals, dream big. It's a process and most people just don't want to do it. So we start there and then we start looking at them. Like I'm not one of those people that's like, take your, lowest 3 qualities and let's bring those up because that's a waste. You should delegate that. We find out where you're strong, what your gusher is. We cut out all the bullshit. We simplify. So we get this process. I call it gusher. So to answer your question directly, you got to identify your gusher, but part of that gusher is you got to like being there. Like where can I make the most and help the most where I enjoy it the most? That's a gusher. And what you see, and I'm 100% guilty of this, is shiny objects. People get kind of good at something, then want to do something else. And if you can just focus on growing what you're great at and keep going, then at some point you can do other things. But most people jump ship. We had this conversation earlier this morning. This was working. Why'd I stop? Well, because the law of familiarity, you took it for granted. You thought something else was going to be better. So we hone in on that. And then we start talking about the epiphany, like the epiphany is I was doing this and now I'm doing this. And it's because I went through a specific issue or I had an epiphany and I started doing this. And now this is where I'm at. It's the epiphany bridge. No, I didn't invent that, but it's a psychological process of how I got from here to there. We have them write their obituary, which I again thought was so affirmations and obituaries. I thought was silly. But you know what? You put your obituary on paper. Now you got a whole different standard to live to because that's what someone's going to say when you're dead. And if you're not fulfilling that, you're just cheating yourself. And then we start talking about their team. Like they are the culture of their business, not the team isn't the culture. They are the culture and it comes out that way. So our starting point is going through that process of refinement and execution. And really, if you can just get your gusher down and be pretty good at it, there's really no limit. If you can get good at something you enjoy and you can be compensated for and you can do over and over, that's pretty powerful. And most people never get there. They do. What is the stat? 87% of the United States hates their job.
Yeah.
So less than 13% of the population even has a gusher they like. Now, some of them.
Well, I think most people never take the time to actually figure out what that is for themselves. They don't take the time. And when you talked about things like meditating, I used to think meditating was hokey and ridiculous, but meditation is literally sitting down, quieting your mind and focusing on something to get an answer. That's literally what meditation is. So for me, meditation is if I have this thing that I'm trying to figure out, I'll just sit and I'll shut my eyes or I'll stare at something and I will just contemplate, focus on that question until I come up with or download or whatever you want to call it. It doesn't matter. But I used to think meditation was like this activity of, and you got to sit and you got to cross your legs and whatever. And there's incense burning. And that was the belief I had in my head. But when I really started to figure out what it was quieting the noise and focusing on a thing or nothing. And it was life-changing for me. But I think most people don't stop to do that. I think they just get caught in this world and then they use their cell phone or internet or something as a distraction from that focus. And I think that's on purpose. I think, that's the devil's workbook right there, man. Keep you distracted so you don't live to your full potential.
I would 100% agree. I may try this meditating thing. It's like the third time I've heard it in a week. that it works. So
I can help you out with Joe, man. I'll help you out how I started doing it, because it was awkward and weird to begin with. But I'm telling you, it's life changing, because I've come up with some realizations. And what's funny is that I've come up with realizations that were so like, it was meant to be. Almost like you knew it all along, but you didn't know it, type of deal. Like you were so sure that was the answer. No one could talk you out of it. And it was interesting, because I've had a couple instances in my life where I did that, to the point where I was like, I know to every fiber of my being that this is the right decision to make. Whereas people would say, yeah, you shouldn't do that or whatever. And I'm like, I thank you for your input, but I'm not listening to that. I know 100%. And it came from that process. So I can help you out with that.
Awesome. I'll take the help.
Yeah, man.
Is that called kismet when that happens?
I don't know what that's called. It's called a realization of reality. I don't know what it's called, but I'll have to look that up now.
Okay. I could be wrong. I've been wrong once.
Well, the guys that are editing this video will look it up, I'm sure, and let me know. But yeah, man, it's just one of those things that I think you should continuously develop yourself and figure out what you like and reanalyze that and constantly go back. I'm a big fan of the EOS system, entrepreneurial operating system. And in that, they talk about, figuring out the things that light you up, get you excited, and staying in that realm. If you're doing things outside of that, like you said, those should really be delegated to somebody that loves doing those things. Sure. And I totally agree with that. Any final thoughts, man? Anything that you would like to share with everybody listening? Anything that's coming to, boiling to the surface?
Well, I in the beginning I thought we might talk about sales, but I'll say something different. Because when I have this conversation, it comes back to me. If you're, and one of my secret sauces is getting people to do what they didn't think they could do. If you find yourself questioning it, that's a signal. That could be from your meditation. You should do it. Life's short and you only get today. And I just would tell anyone that's listening, if there's something you want to do it. You'll be fine. And the worst case scenario is you go back and do what you were doing, which you are already doing. So there is no risk.
Right.
So just, go do it. Give it a shot.
And you'll never know if you don't take a shot. It's a lot harder to live with regret. That's for sure.
We looked at a study on that on deathbed, and it's not, they may tell you in a Hallmark commercial that it's spending time with your family, but I didn't do what I should have done when I had the chance.
Yeah. And
so I would say, do what you really want to do. You'll make it. And again, it's all risky. So I'm not saying it's not risky. It is, but you might as well do what you want, because what you're doing right now is risky.
Like Jim Rohn said, and I love how he says it, it's all risky.
I know. I love
It's
Rohn.
all risky.
I listen to him every morning.
Yeah, dude, he's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thanks, Joe, for being here. Thanks for your insight. Really appreciate you. Everybody needs to look him up. You can find the links to all of his information, his website, Instagram, and all social media right here below in the description of this video. Thank you for tuning into another episode of Fix Your BS, where BS stands for belief systems. I hope you've gained valuable insight and inspiration to challenge your own belief systems. If you're ready to take the next step and join the Fix Your BS community, which is dedicated to your personal transformation, check out our coaching groups by clicking the link in the description, where we'll work together to turn your dreams into reality. Remember, the only thing standing between you and your goals is your beliefs and your actions. So let's fix them. Until next time, keep believing in yourself. I'm Dr. Greg Pursley, also known as Dr. G.